Well, there is optimism for now with President Trump's latest statement of the war closing as far as in Iran is concerned. And there is a very real possibility of a second round of talks that is also expected to happen between US and Iran. Now, the US and Iran are now heading towards second round of talks just days after the first round collapsed in Islamabad. US President Donald Trump has indicated that negotiations could resume within the next 2 days, and the talks are likely to take place in Pakistan once again. This comes even as Washington had earlier ruled out returning to Pakistan for talks, but now it appears that to be backtracking. Now, the big question remains, why did the first round of US-Iran negotiations then fail? What were the sticking points there? Was it when it comes to nuclear disarmament or the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz? Well, according to President Trump, he says that the US-Iran war is very close on getting over to end as the attacks and the counterattacks have now eased amid a 2-week ceasefire agreement. Now, what is being said on both sides will be playing out exactly what President Trump has been saying, hinting at the very possibility of closing the war with Iran in the coming days. Now, this is something that President Trump, however, has not been denying, because with the ceasefire and a very fragile ceasefire that still continues to remain in place, it's been holding since, but there is already a blockade, a US naval blockade that has been imposed. And this is now coming at a time when President Trump at the same time has also been issuing warnings to Iran. So an assurance and a threat in the same sentence. That is what President Trump has been saying that if he pulled up the stakes, then it will take Iran decades when it comes to rebuilding itself. However, also suggesting that the talks may happen very soon, the second round of talks. The first round, however, did fail with the talks that lasted for over 20 hours now. And Vice President J.D. Vance, who was representing the United States, says that we gave them the best possible offer. If not, then they will face the consequences. Srinjoy, good morning. A threat and an assurance in the same sentence. That is coming in from President Trump, saying that the war is very close to getting over, but also saying that if he pulled up the stakes, then it will take decades for Iran to rebuild.
This is what you call stake, big stake and small carrot. But at this point, there are really two things the world wants to hear about. One, the first thing being the fact that there will be an extension of the ceasefire. Now, if there is an extension of the ceasefire, then the two sides, the three sides, will have more opportunities, more time to sit and talk. And that's absolutely crucial. If you have no time to talk, particularly if you haven't spoken with each other for 47 years, then you need time to understand each other, explain stuff to each other, and then get somewhere in life. That's the first thing. Secondly, apart from an extension of the ceasefire, you need, first of all, an understanding, and then will you have all those other things? Because unless there is trust,
Prasoon Sharma is joining us on the broadcast. He's a foreign affairs expert. Mr. Prasoon, thank you very much for taking out your time, sir. Do you believe that there is a sense of optimism with President Trump's statement saying that there is a possibility of the Iran war closing or ending very soon?
I think we need to be cautious about President Trump's statement, although it also shows that he's keen to conclude that. But on the ground, we have to wait and watch, especially whether one of the statements that he mentioned is about, which gives that they are ready for a second round of discussions with Iran. That is a positive sign. And I think still many things has to be, addressed before announcing that war is ended. But yes, there can be some extension of ceasefire that allows stakeholders, including India, to contribute to bring peace in the region and in the world.
Well, that seems to be a contentious point, because yesterday the information in that around a 40-minute conversation that was held between U.S. President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi as well. Thank you very much, Prasunji, for your point of view, because this is something that we are going to talk about. When is the second round of talks going to happen? As far as the venue is concerned, it's going to be the same. It's going to be in Islamabad in Pakistan. And what exactly it has risk and what lies ahead? Let's get you an understanding exactly what's going to happen this time. So who's likely to be at the table? The United States again to be represented by J.D. Vance, because this time other senior White House officials or the security officials, because previously he was accompanied by Jared Kushner and also Steve Witkoff. Now, on Iranian side, what we are looking at, the Parliament Speaker Ghalibaf, he was there previously as well. And when it comes to Iran, they were represented by a 70-member strong team that had come from Iran, from Tehran to Pakistan to hold these talks. And top Iranian diplomats and security figures are also expected to participate. What really is at stake is the Strait of Hormuz that we are talking about, possibly when it comes to the extension of the ceasefire as well, keeping the very fragile truce alive or risking a breakdown. The Strait of Hormuz, when it comes to the security that we are looking at, keeping the choke point open, that seems to be the very focus of the next round of talks. Nuclear enrichment limits. This is something that President Trump has been saying and repeatedly saying that they cannot allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. However, Iran doesn't seem to be on the same boat as far as uranium enrichment is concerned and managing US-Iran trust deficit, because over decades there we are now looking as far as these one-on-one and direct talks that has been taking place between the two sides, and also extending or existing the truce, not when it comes to rewriting it, is something that is also is now at stake, because there are multiple conflicts in multiple parts of the world that seems to be taking place, and we do not want a new one. More confidence building, more measures to actually be taking place, especially when it comes to concessions. And there is also when it comes to a 10-point proposal that has been kept forth on the Iranian side that it wants America to consider and to accept. Well, those seems to be exactly when it comes to the points that, are at stake, the issues that are at stake, and is likely to be taken up again and to be revised and also to be reconsidered on both sides when the second round of talks happen. Now, Vice President, J.D. Vance is now expected to lead this potential second round of Iran talks, joined by U.S. envoy, which is Steve Witkoff, and former U.S. White House advisor Jared Kushner. So that seems to be when it comes to the developments that has been taking place, because as far as all of these individuals are also concerned, they were the ones who were present in the first round of talks as well, and it seems that it would be the same team representation that would be also coming across for the second time of talks that would be taking place in Islamabad. So J.D. Vance once again is likely to head the second round of talks in Islamabad. Well, it is still not clear exactly when it comes to the next round of talks, when it will be happening. But as far as the team is concerned, who would be leading, and on the U.S. side at least, and the venue is something that has now been decided. But when we speak of the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, he seems to have hosted the first direct talks that happened between the other side of the conflict, and that is Israel and Lebanon. And these talks also happened after decades. Both of them haven't directly spoken. They only used to communicate via intermediaries. And this is for the first time when they have held positive discussions, so it was not immediately clear if they have agreed to a framework for peace. Well, Srinjoy, this is the other round of conflict where US seems to be playing the role of the mediator, and after decades, the two sides have actually met. We're talking about Israel and Lebanon.
Yes, Marco Rubio involved here. We have to see how that goes, because the Hezbollah have played a very important role there. And Hezbollah, which is allied to the Iranians, they're strongly placed in southern Lebanon. And that's where they have their encampments, their trenches, their positions. And from there, they aim rockets, they aim their missiles at northern Israel. Now, there has been severe fighting. Israel has attacked southern Lebanon, bombed it again and again. And also, when the Hezbollah moved towards Beirut, up north of Lebanon, the Israelis followed with their strikes. So there have been very, very dangerous strikes. in the Beirut area as well, 300 people killed. That's a lot of losses, and 1,000 injured. So now these talks hopefully will bring peace. But what about the Hezbollah?
Yeah.
Can Lebanon guarantee the fact that the Hezbollah
Yes.
will not attack Israel? That's the big problem.
But hasn't Hezbollah in a way also being sidelined, because Hezbollah did not want Lebanon to, enter these talks with the conflicting agendas with Israel, ruling out discussion of a ceasefire in Lebanon and also demanding that Beirut disarm Hezbollah. However, this seems to be the contentious issues that seems to have been raised as far as the representation that is now concerned that happened in the, U.S.'s side, where now Washington seems to be playing the role of a mediator. Let's talk about what exactly is at stake over here when it comes to the second round of the conflict that has been taking place. Now, when it comes to preventing an escalation, especially between Hezbollah and Israel, because this is a determining factor that right at the time when the talks were happening also, Israel was pounding and the strikes continued when it comes to southern Lebanon on Hezbollah command centers. Then we talk about border security and Iran. America ceasefire as well. The terms and conditions is something that both sides, they have not come to a positive agreement, but there is a possibility and the doors are open for further round of dialogue and negotiations. Then when we speak of humanitarian situation. Now, this is also coming in at a time when there has been a significant infrastructure damage that has been caused by Israeli strikes in Lebanon. Then we also talk about how Iran has been backing Hezbollah. This is the shield and the protection that Iran has been seeking for its proxies, or as it calls as its resistance movement in the Middle East and West Asia. The escalation that can further add pressure when it comes to global trade as well. So one round of conflict, because here Lebanon, according to US and Israel, wasn't part of the truce or the ceasefire deal that they happened, with Iran. But Iran, on the other hand, wanted Lebanon to be a part of this ceasefire deal. Let's, in the meantime, talk about Israel, because it seems to be making a big rift claim. Now, this is now coming in as far as within Lebanon as well, because Israeli envoy to US has now made this explosive claim. He says that Lebanon wants liberation from Hezbollah. And that is exactly where Hezbollah now seems to be sidelined to such an extent, because this is Lebanon which is now openly denouncing Hezbollah. And this is the point of view coming in from the Israeli side. Israel and Lebanon, as the Israeli leader says, that they are united against Hezbollah and Lebanon will not be occupied by an Iranian proxy. This is the Israeli ambassador to US who has given this first negotiation talks that was held between Israel and Lebanon, and saying that the talks, however, ended in a positive manner.
We are both united in liberating Lebanon from an occupation power dominated by Iran called Hezbollah. Lebanon is under their occupation, and we are suffering from their constant barrages of missiles and terror attacks trying to cross our border.
So this is the Israeli point of view, saying that Lebanon does not want anything to do with Hezbollah. What does actually Lebanon want? Let's put that out in focus, especially when it comes to advancing a ceasefire framework with Israel. There has been a significant damage that has been caused because of the Israeli strikes. What Israel wants is formal negotiations for peace, and not just in one, but in multiple rounds to take place. Lebanon wants the prerequisite for sustained dialogue as well. This is something that Israel has also been talking about, direct talks with the Lebanese government. No Hezbollah representation at all. So as far as Hezbollah is concerned, it is not finding any place or position when it comes to the ceasefire talks with the Israeli side. Now, in the meantime, let's talk about the Strait of Hormuz traffic, because the way that it has been affected in the last 47 odd days, well, even right after the ceasefire that has been announced, there has been far below level of the traffic even before the war that began is now being still seen while the ceasefire in place. So that seems to be the Strait of Hormuz. The blockade, however, continues, and beyond the Strait of Hormuz blockade is the US naval blockade. What is the data now suggesting? Data says that the strait traffic that remains far below the pre-war levels, and this is now being called on as far as on Chinese side is concerned, because the biggest buyer of Iranian oil is actually China, and China has now called the US blockade to be dangerous and irresponsible, urging for a de-escalation. Well, the dragon in the room, Shinjoy, that seems to be China in this case finally coming out to give a statement, because it says that as far as its bilateral relations with Iran is concerned, US cannot and must not interfere.
Yes, very significant. Very significant. And if China comes up, China is a major player, as is Russia, the two friends Iran has. They've been very below radar in these 40 days of fighting. And now the Chinese believe that if these ports are blocked, then Chinese oil, Chinese imports of Iranian oil is a problem. And that is something that China does not like, and that is something China does not want. Now, what happens? China has also spoken about free trade, the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, and Trump has said if Iran gets weapons from China, as it could, then he will impose a 50% tariff on China. Now, if he does impose a 50% tariff on China, what it will lead to is huge levels of inflation, because no country exports so much and so many products to China. So this could be counterproductive as well if that 50% tariff is imposed, because America is the world's largest importer, China is the world's largest exporter. So if China does pass on weapons, or if Trump believes that China is passing on...
That has come in from the Chinese side, but of course, on the face of it, as far as these statements that continue to come in, because here is where the real problem begins. There is a Strait of Hormuz blockade, and beyond the blockade is the US naval blockade. Now it seems that China has given out its first statement warning the US over the Strait of Hormuz blockade. And the US officials, however, this has now been said on part of Scott Bessent, where he is now giving a direct message to Beijing, saying that China will not be able to buy